So, who topped up their portfolios and is feeling very pleased about themselves right now? Show of hands.
I think because I deleveraged off of good information and trying to remove some risk, I feel really good about my position, even though the stock price jumped up, which I think is a really nice psychological improvement for me for public equities.
Looks like it just dropped back down. Can you guys explain to me why there's so much volatility? Is it just the hype and the uncertainty that's going on, and this is just the results of that?
Hi, Jess. I would say, now there is no rhyme or reason as to why any stock fluctuates, but think of yourself as a perfect example. You took some profit off the table yesterday. If I had to guess, some folks are taking profit off today. The stock popped. They got what they wanted, but they don't need to continue to have that outstanding risk. To me, the markets are like a game of musical chairs. You don't want to be the last one standing when the music stops. You sell when you can, not when you have to.
Now imagine what would have happened to that stock today if they did not beat the numbers and reported just flat numbers, or heavens forbid, a small decline in AI orders. In other words, if you placing bet on NVIDIA at 400 and waiting for it to become 500 at next earning calls, there are two ways to do it. Way number one, it's not investing, it's gambling. If you have absolutely no new information, new insights, you're just using NVIDIA as a gambling chip. And it's effectively same as like, I'm putting $1,000 on red at roulette table. And yeah, maybe they will beat the earnings, maybe they won't. If they beat it, I collect some nice profit. It's just gambling. Option two, much harder one, is you need to have some unique insight, better yet, some unique hard information, maybe some sentiment from how many AI startups got funded, maybe some hard data about financial flows, about AI orders. So in other words, you figure out what they're going to report far sooner than when market does. And that means it's not yet priced in, and you collect arbitrage of your knowledge. If you do not have such knowledge, then it's just gambling.
Max, I respectfully disagree. I think the age of information arbitrage is over. We live in the information age, information era, and I view all public markets and stocks as gambling. Now, you can turn the tables and make yourself the house and position yourself correctly so that in the long run, you may win. But getting caught up in kind of these stories that you may have some valuable information that leads to higher prices, I think this is a fallacy. And when I see traditional media outlets like the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Reuters, The Economist, Barron's, any one of these folks start toting about how great a company is or how great a stock is, to me that's usually a clear sell signal. Now, it's not always the case. But if these mainstream media outlets are publishing how great this company is, where's the edge? For me, what gets me interested in public stocks, public markets, is a stock that is reporting and growing crazy earnings, and it is underinvested by institutions. Meaning, if there's only 3 or 4 or 5 institutions covering a stock, at some point, if that company grows, more institutions are going to have to get involved because they have large index funds which have to allocate to companies when they cross a certain threshold on market cap. But I'm a trend follower. I follow the trend. I don't try and jump ahead.
Well, Riley, like the presence of a bunch of liars doesn't mean that that you don't know the truth, right? And you're right to be skeptical of everything going outwards. But I think most investors that have stuck with it, it's like, sometimes right, sometimes you're wrong. Sure. It's always like a gamble to a certain extent, but I don't know. I make better gambles than most people, kind of period. And the difference here is Max isn't necessarily out there talking about it. He doesn't, he's not trying to move anything, right? So you're right that like all the mouthpieces of Wall Street don't mean anything. But I think you're like the idea that no individual person can be smart enough to like, or rather adhere closely enough to the truth of reality to like beat the rest of the market. That's crazy. Of course I can beat the market. I've done nothing but beat the market, right? Like, but that doesn't mean I can do it with more money or blah, 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 blah. And I never like become fully confident. But the basic idea that like nothing means anything, so take no position, I think is a dangerous one in investing in life.
You can definitely beat the market. There's countless investors who've done it. If I had to guess, most of the investors who are very successful at beating the market, we don't even know who they are. It's kind of the point. But I think, especially for retail investors, folks who aren't talking with executive boards, kind of the idea that you're going to understand the narrative at a higher level than the institutions, to me, I don't know. I've just seen it blow up too many times where that's not something I follow. I follow price because to me, price is truth.
Max, thanks for the commentary. Spot on as usual, though there is one thing that I want to call out as I think patently false. The comp between Web3 and NVIDIA couldn't be more off. Web3 was not a set of technologies. It was not a value proposition. It was not a use case. It was not a community. It wasn't anything. It was nomenclature picked up by Wall Street to reinforce or inflate the meta stock price. Nothing more, nothing less. And so when I think about NVIDIA, I think the more appropriate comp is Cisco in the late 90s, the beginning of the next wave of the boom, the darling, the belle of the ball, the company that everyone looks to bring us to this new era. And I do agree with you about what I think will be the radical commoditization of their business moving forward. I am extremely bullish on NVIDIA in the short term because they really have no peer. However, medium and long term, I wouldn't want to own the stock because of all the reasons that you mentioned. The best customers of their product today, whether it be Microsoft, Google, even Facebook, will probably be competitors in the next 5 years or less. And we know there are also other companies that have been late to the party that should have been better prepared, like an AMD. So they are going to be hit with competition from every possible angle. But the reason why I'm so enthused about them in the short term is the most important countries, the most important companies, the most important governing bodies all need their product. Saudi Arabia wants their product. China wants their product. Google, Apple, Facebook, and every tech company doing anything in generative AI wants their product. Every intelligence agency wants their product. Sovereign nations that understand the impact of artificial intelligence on how they exist in the geopolitical landscape want their product. It's astonishing. And I've never seen anything quite like this. I've never seen demand for something so fierce, which only one company could produce. Perhaps Tesla is a good example of this some 5 years ago, and we know that competition is coming. But right now, I believe they control over 80% of the market share for all generative AI chips. I mean, this is astonishing. So again, I agree with your thesis on it commoditizing, but I was using this NVIDIA earnings call as essentially the litmus test for where we're going to go in the back half of this year. And provided Jerome Powell stays away from rate hikes, I think we could have another 15% to go in the market in a positive fashion. But I'm not betting on it because I'm starting to trim today. You know what pressure looks like? Next quarter's earnings call for NVIDIA. That's pressure. It's so interesting how history rhymes. As I mentioned, I think the best comp for NVIDIA is Cisco in the late 90s. I run into a post on Twitter 1 minute ago about that exact subject with all sorts of cool data. Check it out.
In my mind, the greatest question for NVIDIA is how much of it is software versus hardware, how much of it is API lock-in versus a commodity product that can be swapped in and out, how much of it is proprietary development tools and drivers, which are extremely hard to replicate, versus something that will eventually get layered on top of on top of AMD and ARM and others. That is the big question, and that informs how long NVIDIA can keep margins. Keep in mind, there are other people who make very, very complex hardware. There's lots of people who make memories and LEDs and LCDs, and those businesses are essentially zero margin. So chip businesses can devolve to near zero margin if they're doing something commoditized and the interfaces that people rely on are at the Microsoft or Linux or Apple level. But in the case where the interfaces are much closer to the hardware and tied in, the software development environments come from the hardware maker, then you basically have a software company, which is masquerading as a hardware company, or and the margins approach software margins. So that to me is a key question. And I'm not in a position to answer it. I don't know enough about NVIDIA or the NVIDIA ecosystem, but that's what I would focus on if I were looking at it as an investment.
It's a great out loud reminder for people to consider whether they're analyzing the underlying business and whether that's solid and they're investing because they're going to look at the price and buy forever or not, kind of. Or whether they're investing in the symbol, just the investment piece of it, just the piece of paper, on the stock exchanges, and just say, hey, because the truth is price just keeps going up till it doesn't. That's the thing. That's why the bubbles happen like that, right? So, fundamentals and market trends, they just kind of it's like walking, lose your balance, left, right.
The biggest irony, I think, here is that on fundamental level, there is no big difference between NVIDIA and AMD Radeon. The only difference is not even in software, it's more like in culture and approach to software. Because, I'm definitely no longer a 3D game developer, but I remember enough to be still minimally dangerous. So I kind of know how it is to do Hello World on CUDA versus alternatives. And irony is because Jensen is so laser focused on quality of life for developers, on quality of drivers, quality of documentation, that developing on NVIDIA stack is just, not walk in the park, but you definitely feel that you're getting a high-level VIP experience. In sharp contrast to that, AMD, that's that's like worst possible Silicon Valley, South San Jose style office park, where it's like a bunch of middle tier C developers in these horrible cubic farms, forced to hey, ship something, we have quarter coming up, we don't care about kind of any of your kind of stupid engineering priorities, just ship something. So it is that culture of mediocrity, culture of shipping broken drivers, broken environments. That's hey, we're hardware company. You guys are number 3 in our hierarchy. And, to a degree, I wouldn't say it's Lisa Sue's fault. I think she inherited that mess from previous management. But, the conversations they having in AMD these days, how they missed that boat, and missed it completely by their own laziness and incompetence, since there is no principal reason. It's just multiplying tensors. It's come on, guys, it's not rocket science. As a rocket scientist, I will tell you, it's not rocket science. It's the only thing, they created that culture of really shitty supporting culture of software development on AMD Radeon stack, and boy, was that a big miss on their part. Really funny. But overall, everybody said, you're right, there is no principal lock-in. It's just, when this amount of money is involved, this type of software issues get fixed really fast.
Since we're talking about a lot of investing stuff in here, just the calendar reminder that I do for myself all month long, and I recommend the habit. Don't change investment theses in August. The price discovery and volume is totally fucking broken. The markets just don't work the same. And again, like, you got to decide on a regular basis, and you do you. But like, if you think something big has changed, and you look at the calendar and it's August, like, be careful what you pull out at least the price side of things.
100%. The big boys are in Aspen, Europe, away on their yachts. The JV team is on the desk. This also rings true for the final week and a half, 2 weeks of the year. Low volume environments. They call it whipsaw hunting season.
I don't think there are timing arbitrages in trading stocks. That's just astrology for men.
Yeah, I gave no directional position. It's not a trading strategy. It's just a good reminder to like be aware that in a marketplace, low liquidity regimes are really, really difficult. And every August is relatively one, but it doesn't mean you can make money with it. I just more meant respectfully. I think there's something a little extra dangerous about making decisions based on price action in August. That's all. I would love for you and Brian to reach into your DMs, because I believe it was last November. Yeah, I believe it was last November that I said the big winners compute, and I sent it to you and Norgard and said you should, but like, big winners compute, and NVIDIA seems to be ready to take it all. I have no idea how to find that, but yeah, I know I did that, right? Of course, I didn't do it with enough of my own money, so I should shut the hell up.
Good question. I think the honest answer is nobody knows. The markets are irrational and a clusterfuck, but that can also be seen as a cop-out. My private theory, which I think is not too far-fetched, is that there is a giant truth-finding battle. Whether NVIDIA is grotesquely overvalued even, or whether it's only just getting started and the future is getting built on the back of this company. And people are having that argument using money in the markets, which is why the price is doing wild things. Plus, large entities might be forced to rebalance. If NVIDIA grows too much, it becomes too great a portion of their portfolio, and therefore too great a risk, so they have to sell a bit and put it into something else. Good point that everyone and their grandma are now after NVIDIA's lunch, and competitors are closing in from all sides, including future competitors who are current customers. However, on the other hand, NVIDIA itself is in a position to maintain or increase that lead and to pivot into new products and new markets, and indeed to start infringing on their current customers' turfs in turn. So I would be careful about, saying, okay, here is a large dominant incumbent. It's a lucrative field. Competition is increasing. Their lunch will be eaten. That's one option. But another option is that they will, use their existing position and a substantial war chest, provided they have competent management, to in fact preserve or even improve their advantage. This is what's been happening with Tesla, by the way, which everyone has been saying, everyone is now making electric vehicles. But Tesla has positioned itself in a way that probably it's not likely that anyone will actually catch up with them. NVIDIA appears keenly aware of the situation and very much focused on expanding their product range, especially focusing on software, to prevent being merely a hardware supplier that gets eventually commodified. They are moving to eat their customers' lunches just as their customers are moving to eat theirs. Whichever way it will go, who knows? But they are not a passive wounded beast lying on the Serengeti waiting to get picked apart by scavengers. Very much a live player with teeth of their own, and it's not clear who will end up eating whom.
Well, luckily we live in an age where people saying everyone and their grandmother is out for NVIDIA. Like, not many people actually do the work anymore. You'll like this, CyberL. How about, this is a funny one. I like these things, these fucking social media apologists for Elon. And I like Elon, but out on social media, well, you gotta understand, Elon's a father now. Are you a fucking idiot? He has 10 children. And I bring it up here because it is the same thing. My personal opinion is that NVIDIA are good at what they do. Work their balls off. Have fun. They're cool. They're interesting. So many corporate competitors. Oh, it's ESG and social good. And what if we do this? We can't do anything that's not somehow wrong. It sounds familiar. And it's crazy. So, like, yeah, don't bet against people that are actually willing to do shit.
Massive disclaimer that I'm biased by my robust position in NVIDIA, and I have missed selling opportunities on shares in the past. So consider this the kind of bullish case that NVIDIA will continue innovating and expanding their offerings to prevent getting torn apart. But there is no guarantee that they will pull it off. And, well, where is Cisco today?
I appreciate the disclaimer, and who knows, but my personal opinion is that you're right, except that the market leader in this type of business, they can take a breather. They can screw up a little bit because there's a huge amount of other things that need to happen for people to reorganize around different chipsets and architectures and whatnot. And like, I don't even think they're out of back order yet. So they do have to keep it up, but they're not like their next nearest competitor that has to both keep it up and never mess it up. And it's just like a chip boss at a table. And I think people misunderstand, like, a chip boss just like pushes chips in and like, cause they've got the money and, you know, but they still only do that with strong hands. They just like move their math around a little bit. So, cause they know everyone else has to push. It's not that they can push. It's that everyone else has to.
About a year ago, I brought together Brian with two of my buddies. One of them rolled out global foundries in the US. The other one led high-performance compute and Bitcoin mining at Intel. We had a several-hour-long meeting about lots of stuff. Both of those parties have been surprised by NVIDIA's performance. Nobody in here has ever revisited the conversation of the greenback boomerang, and then as well the notion that a company with 25% of their manufacturing operations in China might be cooking the books with the Chinese government on their numbers of production there.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of companies that are run like absolute dictatorships by their founders. I find that corporate bureaucracies are regressed towards the mean, whereas these kind of one-man show companies have a larger variance, larger range of outcomes. That means that most probably fail because the founder is a narcissistic piece of shit. But then you have the right tail of the curve. And the right tail of the curve has essentially no ESG aware stakeholder consulting businesses. I wouldn't want it in the political sphere, but I think in business, dictatorship, enlightened absolutism is in fact a strong point in favor of the company. Fun story. 4 years ago, I was asking the founder of a large AI company in Europe about NVIDIA because I was kind of tempted to sell. And he said, oh, I would definitely sell, it's overvalued. Everybody hates their product. It's expensive. We are all looking for alternative suppliers or having custom chips. NVIDIA, I think their days are numbered. That was 4 years ago. 650% of stock performance ago, and NVIDIA has only gotten stronger. So when I hear now that the sharks are circling and the vultures are closing in and NVIDIA is kind of on borrowed time, may well be, but I've heard it before.
Yeah, absolutely. Little sharks talk about shark culture and shark community and, what eventually a shark could do. The big shark just eats them.
So are you suggesting that NVIDIA makes fewer chips than it claims, or that it makes more chips than it claims and puts them aside for the Chinese government? That would be quite the plot twist.
On the software side, do you think more things will be possible with CPUs, with sublinear deep learning? It's a conversation we've had before, but you guys know computer science better than me. What changes could come where the relevance of NVIDIA's GPU technology is less relevant, if any? Or is it just indisputably the juggernaut in the room and there's no threats to it?
You nail it there with the difference between the political sphere, the mental sphere, and like the sphere of the individual. And in the world of at least economics and business, of course, it's not the same thing in the real world, but in the world of economics and business, like a company is an individual and it has to act quickly and with conviction. It's like, same thing with the world of people, and this actually is the human condition. We essentially have these like screwed up, don't see right ESG boards inside our heads, and God help you if you listen to them.
Yep, the company is a collective organism. Either there is a strong integrated ego guiding the whole thing towards clearly defined goals with wisdom but boldness, or you have a committee of little nagging voices and OCD and neuroticism, and then you're screwed. It is indeed one-on-one symmetrical. It is indeed one-on-one symmetrical.
Well, we didn't revisit it because everyone knows about it and you can't trade it because it may or may not be right. But from the first time people started talking about it 15 years ago, if you shorted it, you would be bankrupt. So if you're right, there's a huge payoff there. However, you have to have an infinite bankroll to wait around for it. And I don't know, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen for 50 years, could never happen because you still don't know if you're right. So it's not that it's not worth talking about, or it is that it's not worth talking about. And the reason it's not worth talking about it is that if you take the position and put money behind it, by definition, you're saying, I'm going to pay money to lose money until some big payoff. And that's a little like Keno. I think that's actually a really good thing to think about. And I would say that sublinear training is going to be one of the things that makes CPUs work better. And there's going to be other techniques that make CPUs work better, but they'll never be at the bleeding edge. And so you're right, a huge CPU market might spring up to kind of handle those who can't afford or get the GPUs that they want because they're the best. But that doesn't, the existing that CPU play, it probably identifies a mispriced opportunity. However, it doesn't say anything about whether GPU as a class is not going to do well because of that. Because I really think they'll start making CPUs just because they're out of GPUs, and never is not being able to make enough GPUs a bad thing if you're in the GPU business.
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of compute consumption and then the topography of supply of GPUs versus CPUs. Obviously, there's more CPUs than GPUs. And I don't know the switching costs of people to make CPUs that could attack certain applications that GPUs would normally service. It'd be interesting to hear someone talk that knows the space well. Let me see if I can find some of my semiconductor guys to join this group. Some of them are ex-NVIDIA, et cetera, et cetera.